Hi, and welcome to another episode of Despite, our series where we interview brave individuals who are sharing their experience so that we can all learn from it. So let's get into the episode. Thanks, Ray, for doing this interview. To everyone who'll be watching, how I and Ray connected is that he came across the channel, Same Old T channel, saw a couple of videos, and it made me decide to go check out his channel because there was some similarities between my former religion, Jehovah Witnesses, and the religion that he was raised in and was active in as an adult. So let's go ahead and get into the interview. Ray, could you kind of introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ray, known on my channel as Ray the HOJ, and I was a former member of the Supreme Council of the House of Jacob of the United States of America Incorporated, and I basically ended my relationship. Well, I didn't end it. The church ended it after I did my first video, my introduction YouTube video, and so. What I did was basically I excommunicated the church from my life, and it was basically a metaphor, just letting them know that, I've no longer, well, I never did subscribe to the doctrine or anything, but I'm saying the culture and the lifestyle, I just didn't subscribe to it anymore. So basically, that's why I was letting them know that, it didn't appeal to me anymore. But I wasn't actually ending my membership, but they sent me a letter later and told me that they removed my name from the roll. So that's basically how that went. So the Supreme Council of the House of Jacob is a holiness Pentecostal church. And they believe in speaking in tongues. They believe in, dancing, shouting, all that good stuff that Pentecostal churches do. And with the doctrine, it depends on who you ask, because some people actually believe in a literal heaven up in the sky, while others believe that heaven is a state of mind, along with hell. Some think it's up beneath the ground, and then others think that, it's just a state of mind. So the way I was taught the doctrine, I was taught that it's just a state of mind, but other people seem to believe that it's a place up in the sky, you know, somewhat like your paradise, that you guys would go to. But, so
Okay.
that's just a general,
Okay.
outline.
So that's interesting. So, um, when you say some members think heaven is like a literal place. My
Hmm.
allergies. Sorry. Is a literal place, and then other members just think like it's a state of being, or a
Right.
mindset or something like that. Is that like maybe different churches, House of Jacob, as far as their teachings?
Right. And I didn't notice that until I really started listening to what they were teaching.
Hmm.
And I'll get into that a little bit more. But when I started noticing what they were teaching, I realized that there were two different beliefs within one church. You know, some people, like I said, believed it was literal. Other people believed that it was, metaphorical or allegorical. So, yeah, and that was really interesting to me that you had two different beliefs in one church. So,
Yeah, you normally don't have that. That kind of obvious, notable, experience. Usually
right,
the theme, stuff like that, heaven and
mhm,
hell, is kind of cut and dry, right?
right,
And things of that nature, as far as the organization is concerned. But to find out, I'm sure that was surprising to you that, wait, we one church, but some people think
right.
this or are teaching this, and some people think this and teaching that.
Mhm.
So, Ray, could you give us a little bit of background in regards to were you born in? Basically, how long has the church been around? Like,
All right,
do you know how far back your family goes, maybe with this, with the House of Jacob?
all right. Um, the church itself. was started in 1910 in Chicago, Illinois, on State Street.
Mm-hmm.
And so my family, my parents were the first ones that joined the church in our family line. And then me and my siblings were the first siblings born into the church in our family.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my parents joined back in the 1940s, I think it was, early 1940s. And so when we came along, yeah, we were born in, but we never got indoctrinated. I didn't, and two of my siblings, two of my other siblings didn't. I think it's actually four of us that didn't really get indoctrinated. And for me, my story is really simple. I didn't get indoctrinated because that just wasn't an interest of mine. What they were teaching in church was not an interest at all to me. I went to church for only three reasons. And I'm a musician, I'm a guitarist. So I went to church just to play my music. I went to church just because we traveled a lot and I enjoyed that. And we had friends and family all over the country. So I enjoyed socializing with everybody. So that was really all the church meant to me, from the time I was a child up until I was 21 years old. Now, mind you, from that time all the way up till I was 21 years old, I never gave Jesus a thought. I never gave God a thought. I actually did not have a belief and still don't. Never had a belief in God or Jesus simply because I bypassed that whole indoctrination process. So I was going to church. We were having church on Tuesday night, Friday nights. We had church on Tuesday night. We had an auxiliary meeting on Thursdays. We had church on Friday night. We had choir practice and stuff on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we were there all day. We would have Sunday morning service and then evening service. And then sometimes, depending on if it was a special day, we would have a 3 o'clock service. So you might get three services just on Sunday. So, yeah, but I just bypassed the process. Didn't even care about any of that stuff until I got 21.
That's so interesting. I was born and raised in Chicago and never heard of it. Never heard of the church. Don't, don't recall seeing like a marquee or anything like that. So that's interesting to show you how you can, be in a city and don't know all the things going on. So it sounds like your appeal was, like you say, you was a musician in the social aspects of it, right? You get to see your friends.
Right.
And the House of Jacob probably had the witnesses be at the time that I came into the Jehovah's Witnesses, it was 3 meetings a week. But it sounded like you all had about 5.
Well, yeah, in 1 week. So,
in 1 week. So you literally was at church all the time, literally. So you say that you were born in, raised in, but you never had a belief in. So go back. So House of Jacob, they would identify as Christian. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, they identify, it's a holiness Pentecostal church, but they identify as non-denominational. But
Okay.
yes, they are a Christian organization.
Okay. But non-denominational. Okay. So then obviously, there is mention of Jesus and God and things of that nature. So you're saying that from the time that you had your earliest thought or, memory, you just never believed in God or Jesus or any of those things.
No.
And could you share with us why? 2 questions. One, did you realize that, at that younger age, or was it something that you reflected on as you got older? And then 2, was it something said or not said that made you not believe in either one?
Well, my earliest recollection was that, I asked questions, about how God looked or what did God sound like and everything. And because I couldn't see God or hear God or touch God, then my attitude was God wasn't nothing to worry about. You know, God just wasn't nothing to worry about because for me, even as a child, I knew that it was mythological,
Mm-hmm.
or it was like a fairy tale to me, and
Mm-hmm.
they were just characters on the pages of a book. So I just rejected the concept as a child, and
Mm-hmm.
then from there I never even thought about it. I never thought about God or Jesus up until I got 21. So I guess they were teaching it, but like I said, I didn't go to church for that. I went to
Mm-hmm.
church just to play the music.
Mm-hmm.
And while they were preaching the sermons, I would usually be sitting there playing my guitar. Me and my brother, we
Mm-hmm.
would be sitting there playing, R&B songs in church while we was, supposed to be listening to the sermon. But
Mm-hmm.
and you couldn't hear it because, we played through an amplifier, but when you turn the volume down, you can't hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So but that's basically what happened. It wasn't any conscious decision or
Mm-hmm.
anything that I thought about while I was a
Mm-hmm.
child. Like
Mm-hmm.
I said, up until I got 21, I didn't think about it at all. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think about not having a belief or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about the people that believed. It
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't a concern of mine. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
uh, yeah.
So you say at up until 21 is
Hmm.
did something happen significantly at 21?
Yes, it
Okay.
did. when I By the time I turned 21, actually, I moved up to Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota, when I was like 17 years old after I graduated from high school. And so I moved up there, and we have a church up there. And most of the people, well, just about all of them, I knew all of them when I moved up there. So I got up there, and in 1981, my wife and I were made ministers. Now, this is where it began. This is where I began actually paying attention to what they were saying, because before that, I didn't even care what they were saying. I
Mhm.
mean, even when I first got up to Minneapolis, I wasn't paying attention. And then when they made my wife and I a minister, then I said, okay, let me start paying attention to what they're saying. Because in our church, or in the Supreme Council of the House, Jacob, um, if you're a minister, and you don't even have to be a minister, anybody can be called to preach, whether you're a sister, a brother, a deacon, whatever,
Mhm.
But I was made an elder, and it's different than y'all's elders, because in our church, you could be an elder, but I was a junior minister at the time. I wasn't ordained. So,
Mhm.
but I started actually paying attention to what was being said. And so, uh, and it stemmed, my attention was caught by something that the pastor said at the time. He triggered a memory of a conversation that I had had with my mother when I was like 9 or 10 years old. And if you don't mind sharing,
Yeah, go ahead.
10 years old, I came home from school and my mom had been studying. And so she had her books, everything out on the table. And so I was looking at the books, reading the name, the title of the book, and I was reading the author of the book, which was our founder and the successor to the founder. And so I was looking at the title and the names on it. And so I looked at the Bible and I said, it was no name on it, not on the front, because everything, all the books she had, the title and the name was on the front. So I looked at Bible and it just said Holy Bible. And so I asked my mom, who wrote which one of our fathers, because that's what they call the leader of the church, father. And so I asked her which one of the fathers wrote the Bible. And she just kind of laughed and said, neither one. I said, who wrote it then? She said, King James. And now I know that King James didn't, but she said it back then. This was back in the 60s. And
Mm-hmm.
so when she said that, I said, well, is he a member of our church? And she said, no, he was a king of England. And I said, oh, do we have churches in England? And she said, no. She said, he was a member of our church. And so when she said that, like I said, I've never really paid attention to the stuff that went on at church, but some things seep through,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew what they meant. And when she
Mm-hmm.
said that, no, he wasn't a member of our church. And see, if you're not what a member of our church, that meant that you were worldly.
Mm.
So I said, well, why, if he's worldly, I mean, if he's not a member, I said, Mom, he's worldly. I said, why are we reading a worldly man's book? And she
Mhm.
said, because it's the word of God, right? And so as a kid, I was like, oh, okay. And I just went on about my business. And that memory didn't come up until my pastor was preaching in 1981. He was preaching a sermon called The Word. And he was trying to encourage us to get into our Bible school because we were new ministers. All of us were new
Mhm.
ministers. And so he was preaching about the word, and he said, you need to be a Bible school because the world is trying to change the Bible. We got all these different interpretations. And so he started rattling off of these different Bibles and everything. He said, but we don't use none of them. We use the good old King James Bible. And as soon as he said that, it was like bells and whistles rang in my mind, in my head. And I was like, wow. And I said, I got to find out who this King James is.
Yeah.
So it was from there that I started studying King James.
Mm.
And so from there, and like I said, as I started really paying attention and listening to what they were preaching, I learned how they interpret the scriptures and everything, or at least the house of Jacob's interpretation of the
Mhm.
scriptures.
Mhm.
And then that's when I noticed the difference in interpretation because my pastor up in Minnesota was teaching it from a allegorical they call it spiritual, but it's really allegorical.
Mhm.
And so, but then when I would go other places, I heard people talking about heaven as though it's a place up in the sky,
Mhm.
So I was like, wow, two different interpretations in one church. And
Mhm.
so I just continued to learn, and I was studying King James and the King James Bible, but I was studying it from a political perspective
Mm.
because, his Bible is completely political. I
Mhm.
mean, the reasons why he even had that Bible created was political. So I studied that, and then I kind of was doing like reverse engineering. I kept going back and I saw that there was another Bible before his, another English Bible that
Mhm.
Queen Elizabeth had made, and that was the Bishop's Bible. And then when I kept going back, and I go back to King Henry VIII,
Mhm.
and the first English Bible was the Great Bible. And
Mhm.
then I was studying, his reasons for having the Bible, his version of the Bible done. And I found out that they broke off from the Catholic Church
Mhm.
and everything. So that just really intrigued me. And like I said, by the time I did all my studying, I went all the way back through Christianity and everything,
Mhm.
and found out that, it was basically the Roman Empire state religion.
Mhm.
They were the ones that put it all together. So
Mhm.
when I went all the way back to that and I realized that, wait, man, this is all man-made. All of it is just man-made. You know, I didn't see uh any signs of any God in it. Like I said, I didn't believe in a God anyway, but by the time I did all of that and realized that it was all man-made, I was like, wow. I said, people actually believe this?
Mhm.
And so that's what happened with me. I just never believed in a God, but once I found out that it was all man-made anyway, I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Mhm.
So for me, church became an observatory later
Mhm.
on,
Mhm.
as I studied through it, because it took me some years to go through this. And I think I concluded in 1998 that, yeah, this is all man-made. And, I started to actually leave the church in the year 2000, but, having wife and the kids, my kids, we were very active in church. So I didn't want to disrupt the family,
Mhm.
so I went ahead and stayed, but I said, hey, I'm going to do it the way I do it. I can use the doctrine and I can use it in a positive way, because basically when I basically preached about like love and peace and hope, and I never really mentioned Jesus or God because you don't need to mention them, to talk about love and hope and peace and everything. So I basically, that's the way I preached it. And so,
Mm. So you did remain a minister and preaching and things of that nature?
Mhm.
Okay.
All the way up into 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, did you like step down or pull back or?
Yes, I talked to my pastor at the time, and told him that I didn't want to preach anymore. I said, don't even call me to the pulpit. You know, all I want to do, I'll come and play my guitar, and
Mm-hmm.
that's my contribution to the service.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mind helping out with other things around the church at the time. So yeah, I continued, and still held my minister's license, even though I didn't preach. I had not preached, like I said, since 2008.
Mm-hmm. Significant in regards for you to make that decision to say, I'm willing, I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
maybe your kids were still small and things of that nature. So I'm willing to still stay active,
Mm-hmm.
in the church, but I'm drawing the line here. I don't want to come up to the pulpit and
Right.
preach.
Yeah. There was. I mean, at first, like I said, I was preaching. I
Mm-hmm.
continued to preach.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, I said, now, am I really helping people or helping the situation because I'm perpetuating something that I know is not true? So that kind of started, weighing on me. And
Mm-hmm.
then after a while, like I said, nah, I can't do it. I can't do it no more. I don't want to stand up here and even give the illusion that I'm, you know,
Mm-hmm.
perpetrating or perpetuating
Mm-hmm.
this doctrine and this
Mm-hmm.
Bible when I know that none of it's true.
Yeah.
It's all man-made. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This question is not in the flow of what we're talking about, but I'm just curious. Um, the makeup of membership
Mhm.
collectively. Is it mostly like African American or Black
Yeah.
people?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's majority African American, but we do have Caucasians,
Okay.
and I think we had maybe a few Mexicans too. I think
Okay.
down in like Arizona and Texas area, yeah.
Okay.
But it's predominantly African American.
Okay. Interesting. I was just curious. And so 2008 stopped preaching, but
Right.
continued to, do the music, help out, things of that nature.
Hmm.
And so that I don't miss anything, because what year did you submit your letter? That was recently, right?
Well, I didn't submit a letter.
I'm sorry, not a letter. Did the video.
Oh, that was this year. That was in January this year.
Okay. So then 2008, stop preaching, but still going with the flow
Right.
of things. Did your video, and then they sent you a letter of
Yes.
this year.
Yeah.
Um, wh- what what was life like between that and when you just said, I can't take it no more, and you did the video?
Uh, Life was fine. I mean, because nobody bothered me about the way I was doing it. My pastor was cool with it. He didn't say anything. The overseer didn't say anything. Because we do have general overseers like you guys have, district overseers, just like you guys have district overseers.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't say anything, because I was still active. I was coming to church. I was coming to church basically up until probably around 2010. That's when I really started cutting my attendance down.
Okay.
And from 2010 all the way up to 2025, because I didn't want to do it drastically, abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of stopped going out on Tuesday nights first. I did that for a while, and then I stopped going out on Friday nights, and then I stopped attending the auxiliaries that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then Sundays, I started cutting out the Sunday evening service, until I got down to like Sunday morning service. So by, I would say 2016, 2017, I was really down to just one service
Mm-hmm.
a week,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that wasn't every week.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time the pandemic came, you would probably only see me at church maybe once every other month or maybe once every 2 months, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But again, nobody really said anything. And I was in our church's national choir too. And that I resigned from the national choir in 2016 because even with that, as I started listening, actually listening to the words that they were singing in the songs, I was like, ah man, I'm still helping perpetuate it by through the songs.
Yeah.
And so I said, and then I was kind of tired of playing the same music. You know, I've
Mm-hmm.
been playing this music all my life,
Yeah.
and it just started losing its appeal to me. You know, it just didn't appeal to me anymore. So I, I gave my resignation as far as the national choir, and then, like I said, from there, 2016, basically, I was, like I said, at church maybe once every other month, or once every 2 months, and then when the pandemic came, it was pretty much over. Well, it was over.
Yeah.
It was over then because I thought about it for a good while. That first year that we were uh, at home, and I said, yeah, I'm good. I don't think I need to go back. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I need to go back. And if I do, you know, it'll probably be even less than what it was,
Mm-hmm.
before the pandemic. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I didn't go back.
Yeah. So, like in the witness world, it sounded
Mm.
like you basically was fading.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's the term they give in the witness world. So during this fading period, right?
Mhm.
Um, it sounded like, from 2016 when you resigned with the choir up until 2020, you was chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. Like, how did that impact? Like, I don't know how old your kids might have been, but like, how did that impact? Like, well, did like people kind of shun you? Did it kind of disrupt the family, your siblings, things of that nature? Were
No,
you kind of getting hounded? Like, why aren't you coming to service?
no, not really. The only ones that would ask that would be like my sisters, one of my sisters, and that was about it. At first, my wife would be kind of, "Are you going to church?" Nope, I'm not going. And well, why ain't you going? She didn't want to go out by herself, which I understood, but I
Mm-hmm.
had to stand my ground, and I said, "Nah, I'm not going."
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't disrupt my family simply because by 2016, all of my kids were grown. They were out of the house.
Okay.
All right. They had all
Mm-hmm.
moved. And so it was just my wife and I. And
Mm-hmm.
so for the most part, she would go and then she kind of stopped going out on the Tuesday and Friday nights. And really, I wasn't paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
She just would say, I'm not going out tonight. I'm not going out. And so in 2022, T, she was in Texas visiting our kids. I didn't go on that trip. And then she called me and she said, I got something to tell you. And now, mind you, the church was still closed down that during that time.
Okay.
And so I said, what is it? And she said, well, I'm resigning from the church. And I said, what? Now, mind you, my wife joined the church.
She
My
wasn't
wife
born in.
joined the church when she was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had grown up Baptist all her
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
and then she came to our church when we met. But when she called me and told me that, I said, when did you decide this? And she said, well, I've been thinking about it for a long time. I said, well, how long? She said, I don't know how long, but it's been a long time. And I said, so you're actually going to resign your membership? And I said, why? And she said, well, it was fun and I enjoyed it until I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I can't tell you exactly when I started feeling that way, but I can't do it no more. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and
Mm-hmm.
so, like I said, she actually did this 3 years before I did the video. And so, yeah, people were very shocked that she quit because she was like a darling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they loved her. She had a meek disposition, and she was very always smiling and everything. But now don't make her mad. Now she got a quick temper. So, but most of the time, people knew her as it. They just loved her because she was very active in the church, and she handled a lot of the church business in our local mission. So people were very shocked, and a lot of people thought I was the cause of it because I actually started posting things about religion and Christianity and the King James Bible. I started posting that on my Facebook page back in 2016. And so even back then, now some people did kind of shun me for that, for posting, they kind of distanced themselves from me, which is fine,. But not a lot of people. But then when she quit, a lot of people thought it was because of me, because I was posting all this stuff and because I convinced her. But honestly, she didn't want to hear what I had to say about the history and stuff. I would try to share it with her, but she would always say, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. And so I didn't know she was going through this process, you know. And so she told me afterwards, when she told me that she was resigning, she told me that, she didn't want to hear what I had to say at that time because she didn't want any type of influence, any type of outside influence, to influence her decision. So it was just all her own decision. I mean, she just couldn't get with it anymore. She didn't understand the way that our church interpreted the scripture. She said the Bible was always confusing to her, and it just didn't make sense. And so when she came to our church, I guess it really threw her off the way that they were interpreting it, because she, like I said, she's born Baptist, and in the Baptist church, it's more of a literal interpretation. So, but yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah,
So,
that's very interesting. Yeah, that's kind of interesting that she was having her processes, probably seemed like more internal because
mhm.
you were kind of like, whoa, what? you know,
Right,
like
right.
what happened, and then here it is, yours were a little bit more outward, right? Posting
Mhm.
on Facebook,
Yeah,
trying to, drum up conversations about things that you have read and researched, and she didn't want to kind of hear it.
right.
And I guess it's maybe because she was trying to process everything in her mind,
Hmm.
you know. And so, interesting that you say that she came in as like an adult convert.
Hmm.
How typically do people, like I say, born and raised in Chicago, never heard of the church, never,
Hmm.
seen like a marquee or anything like that, that stood out for me to say, oh yeah, I remember
Right,
that.
right.
So typically, is it more so like witnesses, they try to convert people right by cart witnessing, door-to-door
Mhm.
witnessing, things like that to bring people, in the membership. Is that even a priority, I guess, for the House of Jacob as far as like the membership, or do they kind of like keeping it as a closed community?
Well, if you're talking about as far as getting people to join, is that what you're
Yeah,
referring to?
yeah.
Basically, they just call it missionarying. So you might talk to somebody at your job and invite them
Mm-hmm.
out to church or something, but they don't go door to door knocking or anything.
Okay.
They just in conversations. They might meet somebody in a grocery store, and they
Mm-hmm.
strike up a conversation. But really, most of the people just like probably the JWs, most of the people are born in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so now during the 60s and 70s, they got a lot of new converts,
Yeah. Yeah.
during that time. But
Mhm.
after like the 80s, it kind of slowed down. It wasn't a lot of people joining. They were still getting people to
Yeah.
join, but not a lot.
No, yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Okay. With joining, like for the
mhm,
most part, like at a Baptist church from when I grew up. They will open the doors. You come up, say you want to get baptized.
right.
Now, I got baptized at 18. I think I left for college like 2 weeks later. So I got like exempt from stuff, you
Mhm,
know.
right.
Um, how does the process go if you had someone who was an adult, convert, like how would they be able to say, yes, I'm interested in becoming a
Oh,
member?
yeah, they open up the doors of the church. You
Okay.
know, when we had members visit, you know, if they won't do it the first time that you come out, but if you come out like a second time or a third time, you know, and usually they're coming out with a member, you
Yeah.
know, that brings them to church, and the
Mm,
member will let the pastor know that they are interested in joining or whatever,
mm,
and so they will open up the doors of the church, you know,
gotcha.
and
Yes.
receive them in as a member. So yeah,
Mm-hmm. And so when you going back to when they sent you the letter,
hmm
um, basically saying you are no longer a member, even though that's not what your video was about. You was just
right,
expressing you like your thoughts. And
mhm,
in response to that, they sent you a letter.
right.
So people who are still in, like, do you have family members still in?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So are they allowed to talk to you or
sure.
okay.
Now they people still do the same kind of shunning that they
Mm-hmm.
do in the JWs, you
Okay.
know, because when I did that video, yeah, a lot of people cut me off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
People that used to call just stopped calling, you know. And people that used to, you know, inbox me on Facebook, they stopped inboxing me. You know, they removed me from, they had a group uh, in the House of Jacob, as a House of Jacob group that they call My Spiritual Family
Mm-hmm.
uh, page. And like, I guess immediately they took me off that list, off that, out of that group, cause, and I was like, wow, they didn't wait. They didn't even give it a day, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
immediately took me out as soon as they saw that video. And, you know, I expected it, you know, because I know how people react. You know how people
Yeah.
react to, you know, something like that
Mm-hmm.
in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I expected it. I expected everything that happened, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which was cool simply because I know that the people are indoctrinated. And
Yes.
really, I don't blame them. I don't, when they act that way, I don't blame them because they're
Mm-hmm.
indoctrinated. I
Mm-hmm.
understand the indoctrination. So, you know, I didn't cut anybody out of my Facebook page. I didn't unfriend anybody, you know, unless they came on there, you know, constantly trying to spew the House of Jacob viewpoint, you know, trying to
Mm-hmm.
defend the church and
Mm-hmm.
everything. You know how they do. They came to your channel too.
Yeah.
Did they?
Mm-hmm.
Some people thought I had gone crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said Ray done gone crazy. I said,
Yeah.
nah, I got all my mental faculties, you know. They just
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand it because of the indoctrination, you know, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
happens. If you're that indoctrinated, when somebody does something like that, or even when they leave the organization, oh man, they just turn immediately, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
it's basically the indoctrination. But I did have quite a few people that are still members. Now, the day that I did the video, it was quite a few people that inboxed me on Facebook and said, "Oh man, Ray, I really enjoyed that. Hey, I understand what you was doing, and hey, more power to you, you know." And even now, I actually know more people that I didn't know, you know, in the organization. I
Mm-hmm.
gained new friends, you
Mm-hmm.
know, when I put that video and started doing my videos, because people will inbox me now and
Mm-hmm.
say, "Hey Ray, keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm enjoying your videos. I'm glad you did what you did. People need to hear this and understand it, you know." So,
Mm-hmm.
and I did a video last week, and it was entitled "The Supreme Council of the House of Jacob Unindoctrinated." And so I had a panel of, you know, some of were members,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, my sister and I, we're not members anymore, but they were still members. But they actually got on there, wasn't afraid to show their face or anything, you know. And we had a discussion because they weren't indoctrinated either,
Mm-hmm.
even though they still there. And you know, that's one of the things I want to say too about not being indoctrinated and not even having a belief in God or Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's people right there in the JWs that grew up just like me. For whatever reason, they may not have gone through the same circumstances.
Yeah.
Mine was because I just totally missed the indoctrination process
Mm-hmm.
and didn't think anything about the religion until I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
But by that time, it was just too late to indoctrinate me. And that's the same as it is in all churches. In every church, you got people like me that never got indoctrinated. They are there. They know how to navigate through the culture and through the community,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't believe. They
Mm-hmm.
never have believed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was strange to me as I started talking to people to realize, because like I said, I never even thought about belief at all until after, I did all the research and came to my conclusion that all of it was man-made. And then after that, I started, like I said, church became an observatory for me because I was watching people
Mm-hmm.
and, wondering if these people actually believe. And then when I started having conversations after church with people, and then even when we went to our convention, I would have conversations with people, asking them what they believed, you know, what doctrine they believed that's being taught by the church. And there was a lot of people that didn't know. They didn't understand the doctrine. They wasn't there for that either. They were just there because it's community, and they were
Mm-hmm.
born into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I,
So you all have conventions and like annual conventions as
yes.
well? Okay.
Yeah. We had
Okay.
annual conventions every year. And we also, after the annual conventions, we would have district convention,
Okay.
So yeah, we did a lot of traveling. And
Okay. Okay. What do you think, like, well, I don't even, let me not put words in your mouth.
mhm.
Would you have an opinion about if you met someone and it came up in conversation that once was part of the house of Jacob,
Uh,
and maybe they know somebody at work or something like that, and they interested, went a couple of times in joining. Would
uh,
you not necessarily, I don't want to say encourage or discourage, what would you say to them?
I would say check it out. You know, I mean, because I don't try to influence anybody's opinion or their
Mhm.
decision in that,
Mhm.
because everybody would have to check it out for themselves.
Mhm.
Now, if they ask me outright, do I think it's, true, or if they ask me my experience, I would share that experience. But as far as if they wanted to go, I'd say go, check it out.
Mhm.
I did a video in August because I had a lot of people that I interact with on those YouTube lives.
Mhm.
Just like I get on yours sometime. I get on a
Yeah.
lot of different denominations,
Mhm.
they're ex Episcopalians, ex
Right.
Mormons, and
Right.
everything. And they would always ask me about when they see my moniker,
Mhm.
Ray the XHOJ, and they would always say, "What is the HOJ?" When I
Mhm.
tell them, you know, they had all these questions. So I did that video to let them know, where they can learn more about the Supreme Council of the House of Jacob. And I'll say this now, any of your listeners or viewers that want to know more about the House of Jacob, just go to their website, which is schoj.org. And there you can find out more about the church. And so I did that so that people could actually go, and see it. I mean, you can click on the map. Like I told you, that
Mhm.
we have a church there in Chicago now on Everhart. And so if you want to go check it out and see what they're about, I'm sure you'll find it a lot different than the JWs.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people, just to go check it out. And see, that was one thing that I did even when I was doing all my research and everything. I was studying uh, different denominations in Christianity.
Mhm.
I've visited so many churches. I've visited Catholic, Episcopalian, Methodist, uh, uh, Pentecostal, Baptist, all the different churches, all the different flavors of Christianity. I visited a lot of churches
Mhm.
because that was my field. research.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing that for me. I was just doing it because I was doing it because I was curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And JWs. I've been to the JWs like 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
sure they welcome you with
yeah,
big
they do.
arms. Come, come. So
Yeah.
happy to have you.
Well, I had two elders that came to my door before.
Mm-hmm.
One came, a few years ago, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. But then I had one recently that came to my door. I don't know if it was his wife with him, but
Mm-hmm.
they came and they was asking me, they're talking to me, trying to give me their pamphlets and everything. And I listened to her for a few minutes because, I'm not rude or anything. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna cut them off. So, I let them talk for a little bit, and then I said, "Well, I appreciate y'all stopping by." And I told them, "Well, I never had a belief in God or Jesus." And as soon as I said that, they turned and looked at each other, and they was like stuck. And
Mm-hmm.
then he turned and looked back at me and he said, "Oh, okay then. All right. All right, thanks then. We'll have a good day." And they walked off the porch. And
Yeah.
they was talking to each other while they was walking away. And I said, "Wow, I know that just caught them off guard because they didn't know what to do with that."
Mm-hmm.
And I did that with one another JW. Like I said, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, and they
Mm-hmm.
did the same thing. They
Yeah.
just kind of looked at each other, and he looked at his wife, and said, "Did this look like that?" And like, and then he turned back and looked at me and said, "Okay, okay, sir, all right, thank you," and walked away. So
It's probably because they probably saw it as like you were saying, maybe you believed in the devil or something
right.
demonic versus I just don't believe in like a higher power or something like that. So
Mhm.
would you consider yourself an atheist or how do you?
You know, that's what people might call me, but
Yeah.
I self-name and self-proclaim the
Hmm.
title of "Don't Needest." Yeah, I mean, because
Yeah.
evidently, I never needed that. So I said, I'm just a person that never needed religion. I just never needed the religion. I never needed a God or a savior. So, I just gave myself that title. Now,
Hmm.
yeah, people would probably call me an atheist, but I don't really think of myself as an atheist. I'm just a person that didn't need the religion.
Hmm.
And like I said, there's plenty of people like me.
Hmm.
I started finding them in the Supreme Council of the House of Jacob.
Yeah.
A lot of people that never had a belief, didn't believe in none of the stuff they was preaching.
Yeah.
And some of them people, they was older than me,
Yeah.
so they had been in the church like 70 years, 75 years, and never believed.
Yeah.
So that's when I started finding out that it wasn't anything unique or, uncommon.
Hmm.
People just don't talk about it. I mean, it's not a big thing. That's your norm. That was my norm. Non-belief was my norm. I
Hmm.
don't even know what it feels like to believe.
Hmm.
So I had to start actually asking people, well, I mean, what does it do for you?
Hmm.
I mean, how does it feel to believe?
Hmm.
Because it was just the concept was strange to me.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I will say for me, since
mm,
the starting for sure since starting the channel,
uh,
therefore being on YouTube more, when you listen to people give their experience of like not believing in a God or Jesus or Buddha or whoever, right?
right.
Whether they give themselves the label of an atheist or what have you, it's
Mm,
like every person who shared their reasons why or how they came to that conclusion, I'm
right.
like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like listening to your story of I can't see him, don't know what he sound like, this, that, and the third. So for you in your mind, it was like, well, it can't be real, almost
Right.
like a boogeyman, right?
Yeah.
Or Santa Claus or something like that, right? So it makes sense, and
Yeah.
then it does make sense that this is the culture and community that you were born into. So it's just part of the norm, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like people who grow up with people cussing and fussing and fighting, you know.
Hmm.
So then when they become an adult and they make friends who didn't grow up in a household where people was cussing, fussing, and fighting, you know, it
Right.
seems weird or strange
Yeah. Yeah.
because their experience is tied to, you know, their household, their, you know,
Mhm.
their interactions and things of that nature. So I definitely appreciate you, you know, sharing that with us because sometimes people do feel bad or feel like
Right.
people gonna judge them and things of that nature. You know, I get it. People want me to say that I'm this, that, or the other, and I'm like, right now, my only
Mhm.
goal in life is to be good, put good energy out
Exactly.
in hopes that I will receive it back. Now, that's the only
Right.
thing I can tell you every single day. Now,
Yep.
tomorrow, I might say, help me, Jesus. It could be because that's how I grew up. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
But I also call on the ancestors, and I do believe that my grandma, my grandparents, my cousins, people who love me that have gone on before me,
Hmm.
have done some things to move some situations for me or open a path. I do believe that. And I know that traditional Christians might see that as ooh, taboo, but
Hmm.
it is, you know, I believe in the energy that the universe can, you know, bring your way.
Hmm.
So that's just
Okay.
how I feel. But I'm like
Right.
you, I'm not trying to make nobody believe what I believe.
Right.
Just out
Yeah.
of respect, this is what I believe, and even if it's not in harmony with, you know, what you believe,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
okay. You can have your
That's right.
experience, you know. So
Now,
so thanks for
let
sharing. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna, can I go back just a little?
Yeah.
To All right. So I didn't mention that my parents were ministers. I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a household. My parents were ministers. But the thing is, like I said, my parents joined the church. So I, looking back, I don't really know how indoctrinated or if they were even indoctrinated because they didn't impose the church rules on us at all. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like many Pentecostal churches and even the JW in the church, in our church, the sisters couldn't wear pants.
Mm-hmm.
You wasn't supposed to have any worldly friends. You couldn't go to basketball games or do any sports. You wasn't. This was like back in the '60s and '70s too. Uh, you couldn't go to. We didn't celebrate Christmas. Never celebrated Christmas. Christmas in my life. Never.
Mm-hmm.
And but we could celebrate our birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
But we couldn't. It was a whole lot of things we couldn't do or wasn't supposed to do. All
Mm-hmm.
right. But my parents didn't impose those rules on us. We went everywhere. We did everything. We
Mm-hmm.
skated. We went to the movies. We went to parties. We celebrated, not at home. They would let us like celebrate Christmas at school,
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
Christmas party and the Halloween party and everything.
Mm-hmm.
My pop would even buy us a mask for Halloween and stuff, you know, and so it wasn't a big deal, but that was the environment that I grew up in Pontiac, because
Yeah.
all of the parents in Pontiac joined the church at some point in time,
Mm-hmm.
and none of them imposed those rules on their kids. All of us was pretty much free to do
Yeah.
anything that we wanted to do
Yeah.
as far as, what they would call. Now they would preach about it. I'm saying about people going to the movies and everything, but they never stopped us. And then
Yeah.
like even some of the lady ministers in our
Mm-hmm.
church in Pontiac, they would wear pants, so yeah, it just wasn't enforced. Now in other missions throughout the country, they may have been a little bit more strict,
Okay.
but some of the missions that I visited, and we traveled a lot, visited different missions. But when we would go to like Ohio and Loveland, Ohio, or even when we came to Chicago, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I love coming to Chicago because, man, we was doing all kinds of stuff when we came to Chicago. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
man, I used to love coming there. It was one street off of Everhart. It was a busy street. I forgot the name of it, but
Either
it was.
103rd or King Drive.
Yeah, 103rd. That's
Mm-hmm.
what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a lot of little small restaurants on that
Mm-hmm.
street, Coney
Mm-hmm.
Islands and stuff like that. And I used
Mm-hmm.
to love to get those Polish sausages, the hot
Mm-hmm.
sausages.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a lot of fun coming to Chicago. But
Mhm.
the young people were doing the same thing we were doing, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So a lot of their parents, I don't think they were born in the church either. They just joined because, like I said, the church started in 1910. So a lot of the, or at least that's the official
Yeah.
church history,
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people was doing the same thing. So yeah,
Mhm.
uh,
That's interesting, that you bring that up, right? I'm glad that you double back. What was the reasoning for not celebrating Christmas?
well, they said it was pagan, and they
Mm,
based it on what is it, Jeremiah 10:1.
okay.
Yeah, it was, thus said the Lord, learn not the ways of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For one cutteth the tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and gold, they fasten it
Mm,
with nails and hammers, that it move not.
mhm.
Yeah, I still remember all those scriptures. And I only learned all that stuff till I got 21,
Yes.
when I really started studying. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Was it any so they did kind of the similarities with JWs, like they wanted y'all to keep the association as young people
yeah,
with other House of Jacob kids.
right.
But your parents, and that's a good point you brought up, maybe because your parents and their peers, since they came in, or like they were the first generations,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't so, hammered down, like, and
Right.
things like that. But I'm sure they also was like not telling y'all not to broadcast it at church, They,
No, they didn't tell us that.
oh, okay.
I mean, because everybody knew what everybody else was doing. I mean,
Okay.
we was hanging out with church people, but we had our worldly friends hanging out with us too,
Mm-hmm.
or
Hmm.
so-called worldly friends. I
Yeah.
don't like to use that word now because
Yeah.
it don't really
No, I
mean
know
that.
what you mean. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
what you mean. So, what you said when you would go to visit different missions, is that what they refer to as the churches?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All of them
Okay.
were called the Supreme Council of the House of Jacob. It's just in a different state.
Okay.
The format of the church was always the same. I'm saying the order of service and all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But it
Well,
was slightly different in some places as far as, what they did. It depends on who your pastor was or your
mhm.
overseer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It sounds just like JWs, pretty
Yeah,
much the order of the service is the same, but yeah, the vibe might be a little different based on who the
yeah,
elders are, things of that nature, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, okay. Well, is it anything that we didn't bring up, Ray, that you'd like to uh talk about or discuss before we wrap up?
Well, all I would say is to anyone that's in any organization, whether it's the Supreme Council of the House of Jacob, JWs, Mormons, whatever, if you a person that's like me, that never was indoctrinated, all I would say to them is come out wherever you are. I mean, no reason to hide. I mean, I mean, I know that there's some repercussions if you say to people that you don't believe, but we're living in the age of information. We're living in an age where people are being transparent. And so I would say if you can possibly, share your experience because I know people have been sitting in these organizations all this time, never had any exposure. They never exposed themselves and they didn't have any reason to. I didn't have any reason to. I just decided, hey, I need to tell my story because, when I found out how people believe in this stuff and everything, I was like, and then I was listening to all the deconstruction
Mm-hmm.
videos and watching all the deconversion videos, and I said, well, none of those are my story. I
Mm-hmm.
said I didn't deconvert and I didn't deconstruct. I said
Mm-hmm.
basically I've never had a belief, and I didn't hear anybody telling my story. And I said, and I know there's other people like me because I met them, even in my own church. And so I know that there's people in other churches just like that. I mean, that never got indoctrinated. Now they're there because their family is there and they know, the consequences of speaking out. So, but I just want to let them know they're not alone. I mean, here am I, one of these people that never was indoctrinated and never believed in God or Jesus, but I'm still a good person. I didn't need the religion or God or Jesus to be a good person. I've always been a good person, and most people that know me will tell you that, So, yeah, that's all I would want them to know.
And I like that you said that because, like with the JWs and other people that I know who identify as Christian, they make it always, not always, let me not say always, it's often that they make it seem like the reason that they do good deeds or the reason they are a good person is because of this label or belief system. And it's like, and then it's like if you don't have that label or belief system, you like it's just impossible to be a good person, to be a good human being.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not the case. I find that people who have the religious labels and titles, they could be some of the most judgy, non-helpful people I've come across. And then the people who never got baptized, never really, was this, poster child for any particular religion, will give you the shirt off their back. Yeah, that's just my thought. So I appreciate you pointing out that people don't have to subscribe to a particular religion or belief to be a good person. We all know what it is like to help people and how that makes us feel. Do the right thing, meaning not causing harm to people, and things like that. And so, yeah, sometimes people are so indoctrinated that a person couldn't display those characteristics or be that type of person unless they are attached to a religion. So, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so Ray, let the people know where they can find you if they're interested in your perspective about the House of Jacob at all whatever socials you want to share.
All right. Well, basically, you can find me on YouTube. My channel is Ray the XHOJ. And so Facebook, I'm transitioning that page right now because it was really my personal page with a bunch of my Supreme Council of the House Jacob members. So I'm getting ready to transition that page to Ray the XHOJ, because I still get a few members on there, get on there that want to defend the church and everything. And, in our church, we were taught that, or they were taught that the church is the Supreme Council of the House of Jacob is the greatest church on the face of the earth. And they were taught that it's the only true church. That, and we are the chosen people, just like y'all was taught. And every church teach that, I don't know why people don't understand that. It's just it's being said from the church that you go to. And so they get on there trying to defend the church. And I'm like, now you were taught that the church is the greatest church on the face of the earth. Greatness doesn't need to be defended. I mean, it can stand on its own merit. If it's that great, you don't need to come on here defending the church. It'll be fine without you. But I know they do it because they take it personally. Their identity is wrapped up in the church so much that they feel like I'm talking about them, and I'm not. So, and I know that's why they do it. I've read some of the comments on some of y'all JW channels, and listen to or read some of the comments that they make. And I said, wow, it's unfortunate that people are that indoctrinated that they feel like you're talking about them. They take this so personal.
Man, like you called them out by name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, I think you said earlier in the interview, it's like it's sad because you're like, dang, your mind gone.
Yes.
your
Yeah.
mind is gone. So it's
Mhm.
like half the time I can't even be mad, and then I'm so terrible. Sometimes I poke fun at them because I see they so like gone. Just
Right.
in hopes maybe they'll realize like, yeah, what am I doing? I don't know this woman,
Mhm.
but
Right.
you everybody, as
Yeah.
long as to my knowledge, we all had the right to share our experience of whatever it was.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you can always keep scrolling.
Yeah. I say that all the time. Just keep scrolling.
All
I
right.
do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Well, thanks so much, Ray. I appreciate you being willing to come and be interviewed over here on the channel for
thanks for
our
having me.
Despite series. I've enjoyed this. I've learned some new things and continue, to reach the people who want to be reached and informed on your
Right.
YouTube channel.
Yes, ma'am.
All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for having me.